There is exactly 1 month of games left to go in the NFL season. This is where teams that are fringe playoffs get in or are eliminated and start focusing on the draft. This is where 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, division winners, all that become determined. But before we hop into week 15, let's hop into our tier list, as always, on Tuesdays. All right, so as always, we're going to start with the 2025 mock draft season tier list. It's the easiest one to start with, and why not? Why not crap all over the Jets to start things? This team continues to find new ways to lose games. 2 weeks ago, it was, hey, we're about to be up 3 scores in the first half. Oh, pick 6 to a defensive lineman. This week, it's clock management in the fourth quarter and getting outscored 17-3 in the fourth quarter and overtime to the Dolphins. Aaron Rodgers is washed. The Jets are a joke. You guys know it at this point. The Raiders, actually, kind of in a good spot. #1 pick in the draft. If you're going to be losing, you want to be the biggest loser. Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, you are all likelihood a Raider. The Bengals, I understand. Bengals fans want to be in this frisky tier, and I get it. I want you to be there too. And I think if you actually had a realistic path to getting into the playoffs, you'd be a dangerous team. Kansas City, for example, wouldn't want to see you. Superstar quarterback, 2 superstar wide receivers, and they're out of corner too. Not a great matchup for Kansas City. However, 5-8, not only do you need, the Broncos to go 1-3 over their next stretch, you need the Colts to lose games, win 3 of their last 4 to the Titans, Jags, and Giants. You would need the Dolphins to lose games, which that's a little bit easier with their schedule, but the Bengals at their 2-6 AFC conference record, it would take A, B, and C all to happen. The Bengals getting in is like a 10-leg parlay. Like, that's where we're at here. Could it hit? Sure, but should you bet it? No. The Cleveland Browns, listen, they're one of the more fun 3-10 teams I've ever witnessed. Jameis Winston has brought life to this team. They're competitive each and every week. And if they are on your team's last month schedule, it's going to be an annoyance to play them because they are playing good football. But ultimately, they are just that much below pretty much every team they play. It feels week to week. The Jaguars, listen, the win over the Titans might have been terrible for the franchise. You went from having Travis Hunter to not having Travis Hunter. I don't know what they do with their draft pick at this point, but beating the Titans 10-6 in week 14 may have been terrible for them. And speaking of the Titans, they're on here too. And for the Titans, Will Levis losing 10-6 to Mac Jones may have been all they needed to see to be like, you know what? Jalen Milroe, come on down. You know what? Sam Darnold will pay you the money, and I wouldn't blame them either way. And the New England Patriots here in the AFC. Honestly, of these AFC teams, kind of have a decent future. Drake May's looked pretty decent. They're coming off a bye week. The connection with Hunter Henry's there. I like Stevenson. The defense will figure some things out. Apparently, they're expected to be all in on T. Higgins this offseason. Yes, get Drake May, T. Higgins, pair him up with some of those younger wide receivers that this team is developing. I think the Patriots are in a fine spot, to be honest. If I was a Patriots fan of all these 2025 mock draft season teams, at least our franchise has a clear direction and a clear quarterback going forward. The Dallas Cowboys are in this tier still. They're not going to win enough games. They're competitive, and they might be competitive enough to, 1, secure Micah Parsons a fat contract, but 2, Mike McCarthy could be back next year, man. If the Cowboys finish this year 7 or 8 wins, and McCarthy could look at Jerry Jones and say, like, I did this with half the year without our best defensive player, with CeeDee Lamb banged up, and with our franchise quarterback missing time. I don't know. Jerry Jones, kind of older, seems like he likes McCarthy. McCarthy is kind of a yes man to Jones. I could easily see him keeping him around. The San Francisco 49ers, listen, they're 6-7. They're close to frisky, especially with the performance I saw against Chicago. Like, that looked like the 49ers of old. But 4th place in their division, still a long hill to climb. Seattle's got a pretty decent sized lead on them. I think it's pretty much over for them in terms of getting into the playoffs as well with their schedule remaining. It's just not the easiest path. The New Orleans Saints, they're done. Derek Carr probably done for the year. Spencer Rattler season, I think. I don't even know what's going on. They're going to keep trying because the NFC South is just not very competitive at the top, doesn't have great high-end teams, but the Saints are absolutely cooked. The New York Giants, again, similar to the Raiders, it's like, if you're going to be losers, at least you're going to be losers to get yourself a quarterback. But I'm seeing some people cool on Cam Ward. I still like him. I still think he'd be good for the Giants, but we'll see what they end up doing. Maybe they go Travis Hunter and they're like, hey, let's punt on quarterback again. You can't really fault them for that. If they don't love Cam Ward, getting Travis Hunter isn't exactly a bad spot to be in. The Carolina Panthers, man, you talk about, they have been frisky over the last month. They're not frisky in terms of this tier list and in terms of the NFL playoffs, but in terms of the last month of play, Carolina's been pretty damn good. Bryce Young, to me, has secured his spot with this team going forward. I talked about it this past offseason, but Dave Canales is a quarterback guy. Fixed Geno in Seattle, fixed Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. And with those guys, he had, weapons, DK Metcalf, Lockett, JSN, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White. For Bryce Young, it's Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard, who Chuba Hubbard's actually been pretty solid this year. I don't mean to disrespect him, but my point being, obviously less to work with in Carolina. I think just like New England, they should be all in on T. Higgins. T. Higgins is going to get a fat contract this offseason. And the Chicago Bears, the lowly Chicago Bears, a really crappy performance versus San Francisco. Caleb hasn't thrown an interception in about 2 months, and this team still can't win games. I don't think Caleb's the problem. I don't think the offensive skill position guys are the problem. I just think it's poor coaching. I think that they need to bring in a complete culture-shifting coach for this team. Vrabel would be the top of my list. I know a lot of people want them to get an offensive guy. I think Vrabel can bring in a decent OC, but this team needs a culture change. Into the frisky tier, we have the Indianapolis Colts, who at 6-7, coming off of their bye week with 3 of their last 4 games being pretty easy in a matchup with the Broncos, can very much so still get themselves that 7 seed for the AFC playoffs. Aside from the Broncos, they are the most likely team. When it comes to the Colts, they play Denver, but their other 3 games are Titans, Jags, Giants. Going 3-1, 4-0 on the table. And the Broncos have matchups with the Chargers, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Chiefs still to go. We'll see how many starters the Chiefs are playing in that Week 18 game, but schedule-wise, listen, the Colts are still frisky. Do not sleep on them. The Dolphins, they keep their season alive with that fourth quarter comeback versus the Jets. A harder path for sure because they have some tougher competition. They have games against Houston and San Francisco still on the schedule. But, man, what I've seen from that offense the past couple weeks, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, both close to 100 yards. Jonnu Smith, very excellent on the overtime drive. They weren't able to get the run game going. That's been a struggle for them, but Tua's been solid, man, and if you're a Dolphins fan, you got to feel like if Tua was just healthy all year, we'd have a way better shot at being in the playoffs right now. I don't love the defense. I don't love the offensive line. It's by no means a perfect team, but there's got to be some things to look forward to. The Falcons are still simply frisky just because of where they are in the NFC South and the fact that they have the tiebreakers with Tampa Bay. But this is a bad football team, man. This is not a playoff caliber football team. If they somehow sneak their way in, they are going to get absolutely mollywopped by the Vikings and or Packers, depending, or maybe the Lions. Whatever NFC North team ends up getting that 5 seed would absolutely smack the fuck out of the Falcons, just like the Vikings did this past week. Kirk Cousins is immobile. The offense is easily predictable. The defense doesn't have a consistent pass rush. It is not a good football team, but because of where they are in the standings, they're frisky. Like, there is plenty of teams, not just in this frisky tier, but in the 2025 mock draft season tier that I think are a better team than the Atlanta Falcons. The Cardinals are still here because, the way that the NFC wildcard is going to work out, which I'll talk more about in the Fringe playoffs tier, the Cardinals do have a slight shot to be the 7 seed still. I don't think that they can go back and catch up to Seattle like they can technically if they go 4-0 and Seattle goes 1-3, but I just don't see it happening at this point in time. But the Cardinals are still alive for the Fringe playoff spot with some easy games on their schedule. Not easy fully, but easier. They play the Patriots, they play the Panthers. Winnable games is what I should say. But with Kyler Murray, if he gets on a heater, like, they could go on a run to end the year, and if some other things work out their way, they could find themselves as the 7 seed. The Fringe playoff tier starts with the Washington Commanders. They're coming off a bye week, so nothing's particular to talk about. But again, a huge reminder that win going into the bye week proves to be more massive, as they are an 8-5 football team. If they were 7-6 and Arizona was 6-7 going into this last month, it'd be a hell of a lot closer. But at 8-5, there's enough of a ground for the Commanders and Jaden Daniels to produce. I gotta see, what does the Cliff Kingsbury offense look like in December? Because if you did a graph of how efficient it's been, we are trending down, down, down. Can they keep that up? I mean, they had a nice spike week right before the bye. I believe in Jaden. I think he is very much in the Rookie of the Year race. Him, Bo Nixon, Brock Bowers should be in this race, but you know, we will see how it pans out there. Washington likely to be a wild card team, but we'll see. Tampa Bay, again, yeah, I'm going to take my victory lap here because yes, I did call it weeks ago. I said that the Buccaneers should be winners of the NFC South. They are better than the Falcons. We'll see if it comes out that way. We still got a month to go, so we'll see if it finishes off that way, but Baker and the Bucs are just much more exciting. Rashad White, Bucky Irving dealing with a back injury, but even Sean Tucker was good. Mike Evans, they have a good defensive front. The Buccaneers should win the NFC South. And, you know, again, fully healthy, they're the only team that has beaten the Lions this year. Like, that can't be understated. And I have the Rams in Fringe playoff tier. Listen, if the Rams get into the playoffs, don't be shocked when this video comes out. I'm going to make a video saying that the Rams could win the Super Bowl because they absolutely could. Matt Stafford, Sean McVay, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, when they are on, which we saw versus Buffalo, it's a top 5 offense in the sport. And on defense, they do have holes. But where is the strength of their defense? On that defensive line with Verse and Fisk. They can apply pressure to the opposing team's quarterback, and they can absolutely run up the score. We just watched them go toe-to-toe with Buffalo and win. So don't tell me that the Rams couldn't be a Super Bowl contender team. Now, I almost moved them up to that tier, but I figured since they're not even in the playoffs right now, that was a little too soon. But this is the best Fringe playoff team. They are the NFC Bengals, but in a better spot. Great quarterback, 2 great stud wide receivers, a running back who could do it in both the rushing and pass game, and a defense that leaves some to be desired. But I think the Rams are better coached and a slightly better defense. The Rams really could make noise in the playoffs. They are not who I would want my team to face. The playoff team tier, we're starting, of course, with the Houston Texans, who have kind of lived in this tier over the last month or two, which I think is a fair tier for them. They're coming off of a bye week. I'm kind of getting a little tired of the narrative, though, that whoever plays the Texans in round 1 of the wild card weekend is just going to get a win, as if CJ Stroud isn't a top 10 quarterback in the sport, as if Nico Collins hasn't proven when healthy he's electric. Joe Mixon's been great in this run game, and this Texans defense hasn't played together all season. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries. I do think the offensive line completely holds Houston back from being able to go on a run where they go and win a Super Bowl and win, 4 straight games against great teams. But could they upset a team or two and find themselves in an AFC championship game? I do believe that's the case. They have an excellent pass rush with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. You can argue it's the best edge rusher duo in football. 2 of those guys, those 2, are both in Defensive Player of the Year races. You can't say that for any other team. Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley, these guys are great in the secondary. The linebacker situation with Al-Shaair, Harris, and Otu have not played together all year. The D'Amico Ryans Texans defense is good. If you want proof, go back and watch the Bills game. Like, they made Josh Allen very uncomfortable. And that Bills offense is good. And Keon Coleman was playing, and, they didn't have Amari Cooper yet. I get it, but they made Josh Allen look really, really confused out there with Stroud and the weapons. Houston is, dangerous to upset a team or two in the playoffs. I don't think they can go on a Super Bowl run, but I'm tired of the narrative that they're just absolutely cooked when they get there. The Chargers. Listen, the Chargers are a playoff team, and I think that's a win this season for Chargers fans. They have the best tackle duo in football in Alden Slater over the next decade. I wouldn't want any other tackle duo. Justin Herbert is showing that he deserves to be in top 5 quarterback conversations. For me, he's got to win a playoff game to earn that cemented spot at 5. He has the ability to do so this year with Jim Harbaugh, excellent head coach, a great defense. Dobbins should be back. McConkey should be back for that. They just went toe-to-toe with the Chiefs, and they didn't have those guys. So the Chargers are a legit team, and again, like the Texans, I don't think they can go on a Super Bowl run, but if they found themselves in an AFC Championship game, I wouldn't be shocked. The Broncos, kind of the same deal here, right? The defense in Denver might be the best in football. You could make that argument. I'd hear you out on it. Pat Surtain is the best cornerback in football. This team does apply a real pass rush. Now, coming off of bye week and then a week before that where Jameis Winston kind of lit you up with Jerry Jeudy, the best defensive in football argument isn't going to go too far, but the Broncos are in a good spot. Bo Nix is better than I ever thought he'd be. Him with Sean Payton is really, really working. This is another team that, you talked about T. Higgins, or I did, excuse me, earlier with the Patriots and the Panthers. The Chargers and Broncos should absolutely be in on T as well. And the Seattle Seahawks, man, if you are a fan of an NFC team, do not overlook Seattle, because that defense is starting to play at a really high level with Mike McDonald. Not only do they cover well, but they force you to turn the ball over. Ernest Jones was such a good pickup for them. Their secondary with Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon is really, really nice. Byron Murphy now back in the lineup. He's really good at stuffing the run. They can get pressure, and Geno's playing some really good ball. JSN has officially broken out. He might be the wide receiver one on this team. They didn't have Ken Walker this past week, and look at what Zach Charbonnet did. They have a really good running back room. Seattle is definitely dangerous. We get to the Super Bowl contenders tier, starting off with the Baltimore Ravens. Listen, their offense at its peak might be better than any offense in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, a good offensive line. We know the deal there. It's how can the defense play down this month stretch that'll determine if I think that they realistically will be favorites in terms of, hey, this team is likely to potentially go to a Super Bowl, or just stay at contenders where it's like, I could see them getting to an AFC championship and maybe winning it, but I don't see them winning the Super Bowl. That's kind of where I'm at with them right now. But even in the loss to the Eagles, I thought that the defense was excellent. Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, like, you got pieces on that defense. Can they put it all together over the last month? That'll be the test for Baltimore. The Pittsburgh Steelers, man, without George Pickens, the game plan still worked. I mean, the Steelers may be the most formulaic team in the NFL. They stick to what they do well. Play good defense, run the ball. Hey, Russ, 2 to 5 times a game, we need a big play. And that's worked, and it's delivered, and it's been consistent. And, again, victory lap for me here. I said the Steelers were going to be Super Bowl contenders the week after Russell Wilson became the starter. People told me I jumped the gun. It was too soon. Here we are. I think everybody's on the same page. The Green Bay Packers, despite the loss to Detroit, man, they were right there with Detroit. Now, it does concern me that the Packers, 4 losses this year, 2 of them are to Detroit, 1's to Minnesota, 1's to Philly. That is your biggest competition in the NFC. You haven't been able to beat any of them this year. Obviously, that's concerning. Jordan Love, though, has superstar ability. I wish he'd throw off his back foot less, but, you kind of get what you get when you get that Brett Favre-esque quarterback. Josh Jacobs has been huge for them. He's 3rd in the NFL in rushing this year. We'd be talking about him a hell of a lot more if it wasn't for Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. I get that. The Packers certainly have that ability to go on a run. They went on a run last year to close out November into December and then upset the Cowboys in the playoffs. They're in a much better standing right now. Can they go on a run again? Vikings fans, you guys have been asking me for weeks here to make this change. And one, I want to say I'm not just making the change because of the comments, but when I do see a consistent comment, I start to think, let me reevaluate here. Let me reevaluate my opinions. Because when I do this, it's not, I don't want to be one of those talking heads on TV that is like, I said this opinion once, so I'm sticking to it forever. I'm willing to change my mind when I get new information. And you might be saying, Dylan, 42-21 win over the Falcons showed you more than you need to see. It showed me that Sam Darnold can play such high-level football. For anybody who watched that game, Sam Darnold made some really great plays in that game. And Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson have a case for a top 5 wide receiver duo in football, and you could argue them up to 1 if you wanted to. I'm not here to have that conversation today. But the offense with those two, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and Sam Darnold playing at the level that he played versus Atlanta, if that's the level he gets to, not only are the Vikings Super Bowl contenders, but with the defense with Brian Flores, they're a scary matchup for anybody. And then you start to talk about, what do the Vikings do next year? And I think we can have that conversation in the offseason based off of what the Vikings do in the playoffs. But Minnesota fans, you've been telling me for weeks the Vikings need to move up. I caught up to you. I think that they truly are Super Bowl contenders. And then we have the Super Bowl favorites tier. Buffalo still up here. Listen, you got outdueled by Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I think when they're at their peak, they're a top 5 offense in the NFL. Josh Allen had 6 total touchdowns in this game. I don't love what I saw from the defense, but when it comes to who you're going to play in the AFC, nobody's really got the weapons that the Rams have. Baltimore is close, and Baltimore's kind of owned you, so hopefully you don't see them. But Pittsburgh doesn't have those weapons. Kansas City doesn't have those weapons. Houston doesn't have those weapons with Diggs out. The Chargers don't have those weapons. The Broncos. So I don't know if the Bills are going to see a team with that level weaponry again. Now, it does mean that, we have to keep a close eye on, do the Bills get rocked again defensively by the Lions this week? Because if that's the case, I don't know if the Bills can win a Super Bowl, because you're either going to play one or two of Baltimore, Philly, Detroit, Minnesota, very likely. And those teams have enough weapons to really throw you off your game, it seems. So that's a concern for Buffalo. A team with more than one or two good weapons, is that too much for their defense? Kansas City, they keep winning. The doink field goal. Honestly, that one wasn't really luck. That was almost a really unlucky play for Kansas City. Mahomes got them in the spot that they needed to be, but no McConkey, no J.K. Dobbins, and the Chargers still in that game. Kansas City, though, all this experience, they keep finding ways to win games, and they might have the 1 seed locked up before Christmas. Meaning, theoretically, they could rest guys starting after December 21st, and their first playoff game would be January 16th. Do with that what you will. The Detroit Lions, listen, they're still up here. They had that Thursday night win over Green Bay. Excellent game. Excellent win for the Lions. I do worry a little bit about Dan Campbell's coaching decisions, because the more I sat with that, the more I thought that was stupid to not just kick the field goal. I know it worked out, but if it hadn't, you would have really been kicking yourself for that. And in the playoffs last year, he was kicking himself for that after the 49ers game. Does it potentially happen again? I don't know. And then my Eagles, listen, I get it, everything going on with the A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts situation. Here's what I'll say. The team's 11-2. They won 9 straight games. The defense is, in my estimation, top 3 in football. Saquon Barkley, I think if he breaks the rushing record, should certainly be the MVP. I think if he's under 2,000 yards, it shouldn't be him. And if he's in the middle, we'll have that conversation when we get there. But this team is loaded. It might be the best roster in football that is still actively playing. Because Detroit, with their injuries, Philly doesn't have as bad of an injury luck. I think it's the best top to bottom roster in football. We'll see, though. I talk about Dan Campbell coaching decisions. Sirianni's in the same boat. So we will see where it all shakes out. But these are my tiers as we head into week 15 of the NFL season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that button. I'll catch you next time. Peace.